happens is easy and that sort of thing. Here you go.
Oh, okay.
It is,
Is it
on
going?
and going. This is going? It's because someone wants to hear the story of the vultures? Okay, well fine, I'll tell you the story of the vultures. Happened right here in Colorado, where we are right now. And, you know, the land was created by vultures. This was all ocean. The middle of America was like an inland sea. Mississippi's the only thing that's left from it. Oh, we're going to get run over by a car. Then the vultures will eat our carcass, because that's what they do now. But once upon a time, they didn't eat dead things at all. No, they had magic powers. And every time that the vulture would utter its cry of squeak, it would change rock. It would change rock. So, the vultures, see, first of all, they lived in a land, an island land that was sort of in what is now the Gulf of Mexico, in the middle of it. And they were from there, and it was a magical kingdom. You know, it might have been Atlantis. We don't know. I'm not an archaeologist. And there were wizards on this island, and they kept these birds, these magical birds, these vultures. And their colors were green flame colors. The vultures' feathers were like green flames. They were related to the phoenix, which is also a magical bird, right? But the phoenix is a desert bird. These were sea island birds, and that's why their flames were green, not red or orange. Well, they would fly all over the oceans, looking for places to lay their eggs so that there could be more of them. Because they couldn't lay their eggs in their own nests that they're on their own island, because the wizards kept stealing them to make potions.
Oh no.
No, it was terrible. No,
Terrible.
yeah. So they flew, because they were very clever birds. I mean, like, what do you think? It's just like a chicken? No, these are birds are as intelligent or more than we are. So they would fly all over the ocean and look for new islands to lay their eggs.
It's got that like classic.
And they could fly to the south, and they laid their eggs in the south. But the eggs in the south didn't hatch, because the people in the south thought that they were avocados, and they stole them and broke them open to eat them. Because the eggs were green like their feathers. They flew... Someone's screaming at us over there. Oh, no, it's a guitarist. Oops. And then they flew to the west, and they laid them in lands to the west. But those ones never hatched, because the west was where China and the Philippines are, and the eggs were taken as some medicinal delicacy, cracked open, eaten, and applied as a poultice. It wasn't good. So they flew to the east, and they laid their eggs in the lands of the east and in the deserts of the east. Those didn't hatch either, because the red and orange phoenixes, the firebird phoenixes, they were jealous, and they were like, this is our territory. None of you green-ass phoenixes or you vultures are gonna have your kind growing up here. So they cracked them open with their fiery beaks and destroyed them. So that left one direction. And the vultures got together on their island, and they made sure the wizards were out of earshot. And they're like, okay, we're going north. Everybody, we're heading north. And we'll fly as long as it takes, but we're going to fly north and lay our eggs wherever we can find up there. It's our last chance to find a place. So they flew, and 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 it was all ocean. Straight up ocean. It went from where we think of as like Mississippi and Alabama. That was all, sorry, I stumbled on the asphalt. It was all ocean. It was all ocean. They flew up through what is now Missouri. Missouri. It was all ocean. They flew up here to Carbondale. It was ocean. There was no Illinois. They flew all the way up through what, Canada. The Great Lakes are what's left of some of the ocean. They flew up to Canada, all the way up to the Hudson Bay. The Hudson Bay is like the Gulf of Mexico. That's what's left. Nothing. They got it all the way to the North Pole, to the Arctic Circle. But they wouldn't lay their eggs on the ice there, because they knew there was a chance the ice could melt and they'd fall through.
Oh no.
No, that would have been bad, right?
That would have been terrible.
Yeah, that would have been terrible. So this was their last chance. They're like, well, that's it. There's nothing. We're done. Oh, there's one now. They're done. We're done. There's no place to lay our eggs. But there was one vulture whose name was Timmy, and he was scrawnier than the others and smaller than the others. And his feathers weren't bright emerald green like the others. His feathers were kind of celadon with chartreuse tips, which everyone thought was a little effete. And there's nothing wrong with being effete. I'm effete, look at me. I'm bright effete. But you know how things are when people are kind of full of themselves, and people who aren't like them, they kind of put them down. That's what they did with Timothy. They're like, Timmy, what? What's your idea? What? And Timmy said, our voices can create a place to lay our eggs. And they're like, what? What do you mean? There's no rocks for us to influence with our voices. What rocks are we going to move when we go squeak? And Timmy said, follow me. And he flew. And they weren't going to follow him because it's Timmy, right? With the celadon feathers. Boy, it's Timmy. But one of them was kind of Timmy's friend. He was like, Timmy's okay. So he followed. And then the brother of that guy was like, well, that's my brother, so I better go after him. So he followed. And then that brother was actually kind of popular with a lot of the other guys, so they all followed. So all of the vultures flew following the guy who was following the friend of Timmy's. And they got all the way to right about here in Colorado, in Carbondale, Colorado. And I'm kidding, we're not in Colorado, we're in Illinois. And they got here to Illinois, fooled you, and where it was just ocean. And Timmy started to fly in a circle that was 1,000 miles in diameter, 500 mile radius. And he flew the circle screaming, squawk, at the water's surface. He flew low, right at the surface of the ocean. And he screamed it down into the ocean. And the rocks at the bottom of the ocean heard him and obeyed him. Bye, Grandma! And the rocks rose up through the ocean. And the volcano, the magma under the rocks, heard him and made new rock to support the rocks that were rising. And in this way, land started to appear all over the circle. And then Timmy and the vultures, because the other vultures are following him, and they're like, oh my God, look at what he's doing. I didn't know there were rocks down there. How did you know there were rocks down there? Timmy, what? How did you know there were rocks down there? He goes like, because I paid attention in geography class. And they were like, oh my God, smart people aren't like dumbasses. They're smart. That's why they're smart.
Right, that's like the whole definition of smart.
Right?
Right.
Right. So like, you know, if someone's different than you, don't insult them. They have their gifts. You can take advantage of their gifts. Work together like a team. It'll be better for both of you.
Perfect.
So all of the other vultures started using their voices, and they flew like Timmy low to the surface of the ocean. And they called out to the rocks, squawk! And then Timmy led them in a spiral, a concentric spiral. So he was flying, curving inward, like the bathtub drains, until he covered all of the territory inside the original circle. And in this way, land appeared that filled in that whole inner ocean. The top of the land was up by the Hudson Bay, the bottom of it was down by the coast of Alabama, and everything in the middle became Missouri, Illinois, all the places, Arkansas, all the places we know and love here. And they eventually finished and landed here in Carbondale and Maconda. And there was no one on this land. I mean, it was just brand new. It was just rocks. There weren't even trees yet. But they laid their eggs here. And their children hatched here. And so the vultures left the island in the middle of the Gulf of Mexico, and they all moved here. And the wizards couldn't find them. And the wizards were so angry because it turns out the vultures were the source of their magic. And so the wizards left, and their island home, which really had been floating in the Gulf of Mexico from their magic, it sank into the depths and became a puddle of oil. And that was the end of that. Well, centuries went by, and the vultures lived here very well, and their droppings, they would fly and eat other things. They couldn't eat magic beans like they had on the island in the Gulf of Mexico, so they had to eat something. Well, they'd fly into other kingdoms, and they'd eat mice and rodents, and they'd eat beans, and they'd eat grass. So they could eat whatever they'd find. And because their diet changed from eating the vegetation on the magic island, which was really created and supported by the wizard's magic, they weren't eating magic anymore. They were eating mundane. And so they kind of lost some of their magic. And they found that they could no longer call out to the rocks and have the rocks obey their will. They became ordinary birds. But at the same time, with all that they were eating, it went through their bodies, and their droppings fertilized this new land. And grass grew, and trees grew, and when those grew, other animals started to come in and live here because there was an ecosystem to support them. There was food and shelter and shade, and it became a teeming land of prairies and forests, inhabited by many creatures, including the vultures. But then things became a little sad, because all the other animals, there were so many animals that moved to this new place, because everyone loves something new, that there wasn't anything to eat for the vultures. The vultures kind of got shut out. No one honored them for having created the land. They were kind of forgotten and pushed to the side. The vultures had to survive. And so the vultures realized they needed a permanent food source that no one could take away from them. So they decided it might be wise to have a food source that no one else wanted. And so they decided to eat the flesh of the dead. Dead animals. Sometimes dead people. Because the only competition was from a few bugs and some worms. And they'd eat them too. And that's how vultures came to be what we call carrion birds, because carrion means dead flesh. And that's what the vultures eat now, because nobody else wants to. But remember, as vile as you think that sounds, they get rid of all the rotting bodies for us, and their poop brings the plants that bring the other animals that make the forest. Everyone has a special gift to give, because everyone starts in magic.
Perfect.